Hello. I don't think I have to introduce myself, but I will for someone who might look into this presentation far into the future. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but I try to avoid looking down. Please forgive me if this is the way I have to do it. I am reading. I'm Vivian Judith Toiv Mason, known as Vivi to my great-grandchildren. I was born in 1923 and will celebrate my 90th birthday in October of this year. I've been asked by my grandson, David Mason, to record a history of my parents and grandparents so that future family members will learn about the generations who lived before us. I wish I had asked more questions and knew more than I do, but many people my age have the same problem. We did not ask enough questions about our parents' and grandparents' lives as they were growing up, and now there's no way to learn more, so I will tell you the facts that I remember now. I'm going to start with my father, Benjamin Toiv, and I have a picture of him right here. I'm going to show you my dear father's picture. I don't think I did that very well, but I'll improve with practice. He was born in 1890 in a small town in Poland called Mishnitz. It was on the Russian border. He was one of 6 children. He was the eldest. He had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. The family was like most of the families who lived in the little towns in Poland, poor parents working hard to feed their children. His father was a glazier. That is a person who works with glass. And his mother sold dairy products, milk and eggs and cheese. My father once told me that at one time there was only one pair of shoes for all the children, and whoever had to leave the house was the person who wore the shoes. His father died young and left his mother to continue to raise her family. Everyone had a job to do, as the mother was very busy, going door to door with dairy products and so forth. His sister, who was my dear Aunt Sarah, told me once that she stood on a chair and cooked when she was only 9 years old because she had to help her mother. But there were also some fun times, and holidays were wonderful. There were cousins and friends living nearby, and I think they had many good times playing games, as I heard him reminiscing with his cousin many years later, and they laughed about some of the activities of their childhood. So it wasn't all sad. When boys in Russia or Poland were 17 years old, they had to go into the army. And many of them left the country and came to the United States. My father did not want to go into the service. He went to London and stayed with relatives, and he worked there for 3 years. And when he saved enough money, he sailed to the United States and settled in New York City. Like many immigrants who had no skills, he worked in a coat factory where he cut the material and other immigrants sewed the coats. It was hard work, and they didn't earn much money. But there was very little that a young man could do if he wasn't trained to do something special. It's an old story told by many thousands of young Jewish people and Irish and Italian who came here to make a new life for themselves around 1910. In 1918, after World War I, My father lived with a family and was introduced to a girl who lived next door, Molly Fisher. They married in 1919 when my father was 29 years old and my mother was 22. They lived in the Bronx for a few years near his sister, but because he disliked both his job and living in the Bronx, the family moved to Scranton, Pennsylvania, where he worked for an uncle who had a business there. And he eventually opened a family dry goods store in Scranton, and he and my mother were in business together there for many, many years. I mentioned the fact that there were 6 children in my father's family. One, Mordecai, remained in Russia for his entire life, and my father never saw him again. He was really a favorite brother. His sister Masha and her family moved to Mexico City, and we saw them a number of times. Aunt Sarah, Uncle Sam, and Uncle Shia all lived in the United States, and their mother, my grandmother, Hannah Toiv, came to this country in her later years and lived in Scranton with Uncle Sam and then with my parents, and she is buried in the same cemetery that my parents are buried in, near Scranton. My father was a very important figure in my life. He was a small man who stood very straight, and he had beautiful blue eyes and white hair. And when he was young, he had curly blonde hair, and I always loved looking at his pictures. He was intelligent. He really knew so much about the world. He was soft-spoken, very, very devoted to my mother, gave wise advice always, and I treasure the time I spent with him. I always had the feeling I was loved, and I miss him still. He died at the age of 80 in 1970.